So this poll is a little different than some of the others for a couple reasons. Number one, it's a poll with a student. Number two, this girl's Swedish, and I've found European girls, but particularly Swedish girls, they have a different sort of a blueprint where it's a lot less value-centric, it's a lot more comfort-centric, and it's more about just like spending time with the girls and being with them at the end of the night. And so a lot of the guys who in-game, they teach like front door rule, or, just be there at the end of the night. Those guys tend to either be European or really like the European type of girls. They don't tend to do necessarily as well with the American type of girls, where it's more sassy and more value-based. But it's good to get this sort of experience and to get an example of this type of set. But what you're going to notice is it'll be a little more conversational and a little more like get to know you and friendly than a typical one that I do would be. So I'm adjusting to the situation. All right, without too much further ado, let's crack into it and start looking at the actual interaction. Amigo,
hey,
how you doing?
Good. So hi. These are my new Swedish friends. You got
Do I speak Swedish?
You do?
No. I know one word in Swedish which I hate. But other than that, whatever.
which one?
No, there's a word. It's like langom or something like that. I hate that word. Langom. I hate that word. Hate that word.
Translate that word.
It's like not the best, not the worst or something. I don't know. I hate it. But I like Sweden though. I had a good time when I was over there. But yeah.
Have you been there?
A couple times.
Stockholm?
Only Stockholm. Yeah. Is that where you're from?
No. But I go to Stockholm often.
What I like about Sweden is like, okay, so I was in Sweden, we went out to a club, and then I ended up going home, hanging out with this guy and these girls and whatever. And it was middle of summer, right? So like the sun's up the whole time, and it was like 5 in the morning, but it looked like it was noon. And you're looking out at the street, and it looks like the sun's out, but nobody's there. It was like the zombie apocalypse. Like everybody in the world died and just left this empty street for you. It was kind of amazing. It was very strange for me. Yeah, here if it's dark, nobody's out. If it's light, people are out, right? But it's very surreal for me. Do you know the word surreal? Like it seemed very not real to me.
No, of course, I understand. If you're from here, you're gonna think that's crazy. But to me, this is crazy. It's like, oh my god, there's people everywhere. It's nice. You can talk about it.
Everybody's popular here. We're all surrounded by people.
I watch shows.
Alright. So you don't live here on vacation?
Yeah, vacation. Go back on Monday.
I've done it.
So that means this is like your last weekend to have like tons of fun.
My last week?
This is your last weekend to have tons of fun.
So tell me this.
Yeah, I've been here for like 5 days. I don't know what you're gonna do with that.
Fair enough. I feel like so as Swedish girls go, certain ones are like a little too innocent,
I have a wife.
and then certain ones are really cool. And I'm getting kind of in between vibe for you, so I don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know? Yeah, you do. So it was I sit with you so that I don't have like a palm tree in my face. Because I can do this. I can be like, yeah. I'll be like, I don't want to see you. Let's do that.
I like that.
Yeah. Let's get over. I have to go in a minute. Let's get over. Yeah, real good.
It sounds very Swedish.
Second language.
So a couple things to note. Even though it wasn't super gamey at the start, I did hold my frame and express my personality, i.e. instead of asking a lot of questions, I made statements, told stories, told about my experience. And the reason it didn't have to be very gamey at the start is one, that Swedish blueprint, but even more importantly, the fact that it's a warm introduction. The student was already in the interaction, he introduced me in, so for me to go in and be massively polarizing would actually be a little bit try-hard. I can just go into a normal conversation. But you do notice I am frame controlling, I'm starting to do a little push-pull towards the end. That whole like Swedish girls, some are too innocent, some are really cool, you see them in the middle, right? That's a push-pull. Technically it's frame control. And actually what I will do with girls that need more comfort, Swedish girls being one example, but just girls in general that need more comfort, is I will still frame control and I still do push-pull, but it's sort of like lighter push-pull. It's not quite as polarizing, it's not quite as rude, but it is sort of still, I'm evaluating and considering them and figuring out if they're the right type of girl, all right? So it's still taking the frame that I'm figuring them out and they need to qualify, but it's just doing it in a much softer manner. Yes, if you could say the meanest things and they would sound sweet because your voice is like just like very high pitched. So you'd be like, you fucking asshole. You'd be like, you fucking asshole. You're so good. It's like he's like super sweet.
You fucking like asshole, bitch.
No.
Sounds better?
So I think we should take it slow with the whole fucking thing. I just met you, but otherwise it's fine. Yes. Just a man, but it's okay.
But she speaks a good American. English, yeah.
You speak well too.
Yeah.
You just sound extra sweet.
I understand speak English, but it's not like American.
This is perfect. If we were like together, like if we had a relationship and we got in a fight, you'd yell at me and I'd just laugh. I'd be like, oh, this is very cute. Tell me more.
But if I'm angry
And you'd be turning all red. And
if I'm angry in Swedish and say my words in
So notice here how I've done two things. One, I've started to sexualize the conversation, bringing up the fucking thing. And then secondly, how I'm implying a relationship, right? This is another these are two forms of verbal escalation. One is escalating the conversation to more sexual topics. The other is escalating the pronoun from I to you to we, right? When I'm implying a relationship, I'm escalating to we, right? And so this is how, in a normal, boring conversation, I can subtly escalate and make sure that it's always man to woman, make sure I don't end up in the friend zone, even when I'm not super gamey, even when I'm not taking a ton of risks. Very, very useful techniques.
Swedish.
Does that sound awful?
Yeah. That's like, fuck you, man. It's like,
Say the meanest thing you can to me in Swedish.
that's weird.
I won't understand, it doesn't matter. They just go right over my head.
So, you're gonna remember the words and you're gonna,
Yeah. I'll look it up later and then I'll hate you and I'll come hunt you down across the ocean.
Exactly, across the ocean. She has a fake ass.
That's fake.
She has a fake ass. Sounds fake. My husband.
You're very ADD.
Then Norwegian.
Bless you, little one. You'll be alright. Somehow, someway.
I know, but I want to be true. Fair enough.
So what's your favorite thing that you've seen in the US?
Alright, sorry.
What's your favorite thing that you did in this country? You're like, I hated everything.
I feel like I'm bragging, so I'm not
Everything
gonna
but
tell you the other two.
I don't like food.
You don't like the food?
Everything is just American.
Did you go to like nice restaurants or did you go to just kind of blah?
Both. I tried both.
I did, right?
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, like, if you buy like Indian food or Thai food or like tacos, if you buy like a pizza.
That's all blah. That's all blah food.
Yeah, no, if you buy stuff like that in Sweden, you get the real stuff from, spicy and very good.
So what do you do? So here you see I've gone to more normal conversation. I've been asking questions, which a lot of times I say not to do. But notice that the questions I'm asking are not like really boring questions. They are questions that at least elicit her values, elicit what she's into, that kind of stuff, right? So it is a little bit better than the boring thing. Also, by the way, if I lose her attention, I call her out on being ADD, I get her attention back. I don't tolerate not having her attention, okay? Also, the thing where I called her little one during that time, even though you can't see it on screen, I'm pretty sure, just based on the vibe, I probably like gave her a little bit of like a hug or a little bit of a tap on the shoulder or something like that, because that's what I would do in that context. By the way, apologies for the camera being as it is. It was actually very zoomed in, so you can kind of see us on screen. It'll be zoomed out later, so you can see a little more of what's going on. But for now, just focus on the verbals of this particular interaction.
24 episodes.
What do you do for fun?
It's one day.
Everything. I do wine every day. I love food. I go to the gym.
That's like the next day. So
I take care of my
1 hour, then 1 hour.
He's the apple of your eye. He's like your love.
yeah, he's my love, yeah. So we do everything together, like I do stuff with him, kid stuff.
So you don't want to stop.
That's what I like to do.
The most addictive show I've ever.
And yeah.
You just became the sweetest person.
Why?
Because, okay, before I thought you have this very sweet, innocent face, but when you smile, you look like a little devious, a little dangerous. But then when we talked about you, you're literally like the sweetest ever. It's like everything's soft.
I have everything. I have him like 50-50 because he's dad and me, and when I'm with him. When I'm without him, I do everything else, like wine and
Polar opposite of you.
everything else.
So you have
Opposite, it's totally opposite. Like this it is, So I'm two different persons. But it's fine.
I'm both, but I actually know that.
So when I hear this thing about like she has a kid, but then if she doesn't have the kid, she has like no responsibility, she goes and parties. This is a blueprint I'm familiar with. This is a blueprint I like. So essentially, she's in like a party mindset, which is really positive. B, I need to just emphasize that idea of like, this is her time for her. This is time to have fun, limited window, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Party it up. She owes it to herself, et cetera. Because she's already saying that that's her view on life. And that's a view on life that's pretty helpful for me. So I want to try and play that up as much as possible. And that kind of a view makes me think like, okay, she's out to have a big night tonight. This could go towards a pull, that sort of a thing, right? This is a good indicator that it's worthwhile to stay in this particular interaction.
Who's your friend, sir?
It's my wife.
Oh, yeah?
But it's polygamy, so you got this.
It's okay. It's all good. You can have her. It's fine. What is the difference? What is the difference between the two?
Two guys that came to me. Oh, you want to marry me? I said, yeah, why not? Next came, you want to marry me? Yeah, why not? Just find me a way. And then you came.
I don't want to marry you.
Or what?
I don't want to marry you. I think we should take it slow. Yeah. We can flirt, we can have foreplay, we can tease each other, but like the marriage thing, with the nerves,
I don't like the marriage thing either. I don't like the...
I mean, I live in a different country, I'd break your heart. And you're too sweet, I don't want to break your heart. I'd be a bad husband.
I think so. Like the rest.
Well, I was gonna say the rest. Like all your other husbands?
No, not my husband, like the other guys in the world. Like, that's the way it is, right?
You have a very positive view of me, my dear. You're making me laugh by bringing even this up. Do you mean to tell me that a girl as sweet as you doesn't have many sweet to her? I'm surprised.
What do we have?
Do you mean to tell me that a girl as sweet as you does not have men that are sweet to her? No, remember when you did like the fire alarm thing? Like the fire alarm goes off, you lit like a real fire, you saw the sprinklers, and you put like something that's hot on the doorknob, something like that. If I lived in your country, I'd be sweet to you. But as is, we never will. We hang out, have fun.
I'm getting tired. I don't know.
I'm sorry I'm boring you.
So here, I'm still teasing, just sexualizing the tease a little more. I'm also kind of finding out a little bit about her relationship history and that kind of stuff. This isn't something I care that much about, but if it is going to come up, if she is going to tell me about past relationships, she's going to tell me about her view on men, that kind of stuff, that can always be useful information because she's essentially telling me what she responds to emotionally. Like a lot of times girls who, if they have gripes about certain guys, or they have like, I date all these guys that are this way or that way. One, they're telling you what they respond to emotionally. Two, they're telling you what you can get away with. And then three, they're telling you like what narrative they wish they had in their head. So those are very useful things. Now, a lot of times there's a contradiction because there'll be the contradiction between the guys they've dated and the narrative they'd like to have in their head. If in doubt, err on the side of being like the guys they've dated before rather than being the narrative. But if you can be both, that's when you're their dream man. So it's all very useful information.
I want to go. I've been tired for hours.
I want to say, go away on the plane, you'll pass out, and then...
Can we take a boat? So the boat, right?
Boat to the Bahamas? That's a long boat. You want to hang on. Look, I like you. I'm not prepared to be with you for a month just yet, okay? Like, that's a long... I can handle...
Do it. I mean, we can take a boat.
Look, I can handle a 6-hour flight. I can't handle a month-long boat. I don't know you that well yet.
6 hours
We'll probably kill each other. I mean, I did that shit with, what is it called? Oktoberfest. It's like... What? Yeah. That was like an overday decision, like midday.
So you're going to hear me doing some relationship disqualifying. However, there's something else here that was interesting, which you won't have caught because we cut little bits of it out. So I don't want to go on a Bahamas cruise with her because I can't commit to that long, but I said I am open to her 6-hour flight. What we had actually discussed, weirdly enough, because I was talking about if they're adventurous or not, I was like, so if there was like a flight to like the Bahamas right now, we would like go to JFK and take it in the middle of the night, would you go with me or whatever? And it's like kind of a hypothetical thing. But then the student misunderstood that and thought it was a real thing and started like suggesting actually going on a fucking flight to the Bahamas with these girls, which is like a little over the top and not something I'm really prepared to do in the middle of an immersion, which is what this was. However, it did have the effect of like anchoring them in and like getting them a little more committed and invested in the conversation. And so it worked as a little bit of a bait and switch in a way. But it put us very much more in the provider frame. So now I have to be very careful not to end up too much there, and to not end up in a situation where we're being used for money, or used in various other ways. I have to make sure that it stays sexual, and I have to make sure that the right sort of premises exist in the set. But it did buy us time, which is very, very useful. And luckily enough, there weren't any flights to the Bahamas in the middle of the night when we started searching on our phone. I was pretty sure. I actually gambited it a little bit in the sense that I looked it up, almost certain there wouldn't be any. And I was like, oh yeah, not until morning, so you'll have to stay with us until then, and then we can take you, right? So I used it to buy us time. And I was pretty sure there wouldn't be middle of the night flights. So again, I made it useful in a way, but you do have to be careful with the framing of these kind of things.
But it's close. Yeah. All right. That's traveled.
I'll travel a little bit.
You want to dance? Todd.
What's up? What's up?
They want to dance.
Okay, let's dance.
Sure. We need to go to Bahamas.
No, you gotta promise one thing. Because you've been doing the whole tired thing. If you're gonna be dancing and like falling down, I'm gonna have to be holding you up. It's not gonna work.
I'm trying to decide whether I wanted to say yes or no. Like 7 a.m.
Let's do it!
Alright, in the morning, like 5 hours. So I mentioned it before, I thought it had occurred earlier, but basically what I did is I used the idea of like, let's fly to the Bahamas in the morning as a reason to keep them with us for 5 more hours, right? So, I don't want to fly with them to the Bahamas in the morning. That's not fucking on my agenda. If I had nothing to do and they were worth it, I might do that. If she was a Victoria's Secret model and I had no plans, maybe I'd do that. But fact of the matter is I'm not willing to do that. But if that keeps them there with me for 5 hours, and in that 5 hours, they're going to get to know me, I'm going to be amazing, we're going to have an amazing night, and then who the fuck cares about the Bahamas because we all just like each other, I'm kind of fine with that. And I haven't promised them the trip yet or whatever. I just said, oh, okay, I'm down, let's do it, etc. It's kind of the same as think of it this way, yeah, there is a financial aspect to it, but it's kind of like if a girl kind of made plans with you to hang out later, when you just met her, and then you bore her, and then she just fucks off and goes and talks to someone else or just ditches you. Happens all the time, because what happens is it's an emotional decision in the moment, and then later on you can change it. It's kind of like that, where it's like, hey, we're having a party, let's say Bahamas in the morning. Are we really going to necessarily do it? Not necessarily. It's like that happens in LA. People are like, let's go to Vegas in the morning, and then 9 times out of 10 nobody does it, even when you're with your best friends. So that's kind of my moral justification on it. But the big thing is I'm just trying to buy myself time.
You have shorts?
No. Colorado.
Okay, well, you know how many times you have to get it?
There are some, but New York's a place if you're ambitious and you want to take over the world, you come to New York. So Colorado, not as much opportunity. Or if you're from Sweden and you just want to have a good time. Yeah. Your brown eyes are green.
I do. You're green. Like you, the same color.
No, I used to live in Vegas.
Huh?
I lived in Vegas for about 9 months. So now we're sitting down, and you'll notice we're sitting down, went and danced for a little bit, and now we're sitting down again, right? And so what are we doing? One, we're seeing a bunch of different places within the club. We're moving around. 2, different environments are good for different things. So I always encourage people, if you meet a girl on the dance floor, don't just dance with her the whole night, because then she's just getting used to you as a dance partner, and she's not getting to know you. That said, the dance floor can be very useful if you're having a platonic interaction that's not going anywhere. Dancing a little bit, getting a little more physical, moving around with the girl can be very positive, right? So having that fractionation, being able to go from one thing to another, is very, very useful. Also, just leading and moving the girl around is massively good. But I like this idea, sitting down with her, getting to know her at this point, because we're at a point where it's time to build comfort, etc. Right now.
Oh, really?
Vegas is really fun. And then, if you live there a long time, you start to see what's underneath the fun, and it's very...
I understand that now. I will never live there.
But I used to make my money as a stripper in Vegas, so... Really, yeah. I suppose. It's good pay. I just feel I don't know if you could let loose enough. You'd be on stage and you'd be self-conscious.
Like you have good rhythm, but you'd be self-conscious. You'd be worried what people think.
So what you just saw is really, really, really good. So what I'm doing essentially is I've noticed a trait that I don't like in her, right? I've noticed that she does seem to be a little uptight, a little self-conscious, cares a little bit too much what people think about her, and I don't want that to be the case, right? I do not like that trait in a girl that I'm trying to have a one-night stand with, a girl that's partying in a different country that, you know, that's as far as it can go. And so I called her out as she couldn't be a stripper in Vegas. Not that being a stripper in Vegas is like the epitome of what you want to do, but I said she's incapable of doing it because she wouldn't let loose enough, because she wouldn't, you know, be able to deal with what people would think about her, etc. So I turned this thing, which, by the way, Swedish girls very, very, very socially conditioned, right? That's kind of part of their blueprint. So I turned her being very socially conditioned and trying to fit in and trying to get approval into something that won't give her approval, right? As in, it's not getting approval from me, so she can stop being that way and she can let her more animalistic, more sort of sexual female side out with me, and not fear judgment, right? A lot of times, guys talk a lot about screening girls, finding out if it's the right type of girl or the girl that you want out of the night. There's screening and there's leading, because a lot of times the girl's inherent personality might not be what you're looking for, but she's very capable of being the girl you want her to be if you indicate to her the right types of behaviors, how she can win your approval, etc. So once you have high value and once she's willing to qualify herself to you, a lot of what you can do is leading, like not just screening, but leading and indicating the type of behavior that she can do to get your approval.
I will never do it, but I'd like to be there. But this one is only like this.
Yeah, no. I don't think like you don't have to be lesbian or that. You're just like that, like you're just partying or whatever. But yeah. No? So you're like fun with a limit.
So again, more of evaluating how sexually open she is, i.e. screening, but also encouraging her and letting her know that that kind of stuff would be okay. Now, the fact that she hasn't like kissed a girl with tongue, I don't care that much, right? But it's good to know, right? It's good to know how open she is and how far I can push things, what kind of jokes I can make, what kind of stories I can tell that won't push her boundaries or will push her just enough but not too far. But also, it's important, even if she hasn't done that, it's important that I indicate to her that I wouldn't have a problem with that, because that may help her open up in other ways. And as you can see, like I said before, quite socially conditioned. Like, no, I'm not a lesbian, right? As though that'd be like a terrible thing if she'd kissed a girl, right? Because you can kind of see where this girl's headspace is. It's not even that she is like necessarily all that sexually reserved or whatever. It's that she has like labels in her head of that would make me this or that would make me this. And again, she doesn't want those things for identity reasons, ego reasons, judgment reasons, etc. So once you start to get inside the girl's head and understand what the objections are, you can start working on the objections systematically, or you can create situations where you're avoiding the objections.
Is it naturally that light or do you dye it blonde? Let's go to meat packing.
My natural color is right here. Let's go to the package.
The Jane, is it fine? Look at the same line. If you were anything other than Swedish, I'd just assume you dyed it, but Swedish, I have to ask. Yes.
Do you have to ask?
I have to ask because you're Swedish. Anything else, I just assume, but some Swedish are like super light. So Sarah wants to go to meat packing, which is like the best place.
Meat packing, that sounds good.
Let's do it. It's really good.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, it's empty. Actually, pour me a little bit.
Russia is so bad.
A little bit. Okay, good. Cheers.
So this is interesting just in the sense of what is the premise of the poll. Different polls have different premises. Some polls have the premise of this is so sexy, let's go fuck. Certain polls have the premise of this is intriguing, let's get to know each other better. This poll is just of the premise of like, let's go to the next cool place. We're tourists, we're on vacation, let's go to the next cool place. And this is probably the poll of least resistance in this case, given the general attitude towards judgment, the general sort of Swedish blueprint of like, you know, party into the night and then we'll figure it out, that sort of thing, right? So the most important thing that's going on during a poll is getting from point A to point B. How you get there matters, because if you get there with a more sexual premise or a more like invested premise, it makes everything else easier. But the most important thing is point A to point B. So here, the simplest path from point A to point B is just, that's where the good party is, meatpacking, etc. And we'd been suggesting and planting the idea of meatpacking being super cool throughout the conversation so that they're like excited about it, right? And so it's actually kind of their idea when we're suggesting, this place is kind of dying out, like, meatpacking, okay? So we planned it and we structured it. But again, It's not the most sexual pull, but it gets us from A to B.
Screaming.
right?
That's you? Who? It was so funny. I was looking at her. She's like, shut up. I wasn't saying a
I said
Okay, so now we're to the elevators, we're leaving the club, etc. The most important thing out of that last little bit where you heard almost nothing is the fact that you heard almost nothing, okay? The fact that once they had agreed to come with us, I wasn't trying to oversell, I wasn't trying to rush them, I took my time, I finished my drink, I let them talk amongst themselves, I just let it develop. If I start getting pushy, if I start worrying, if I start trying to rush it, all of a sudden, instead of being the cool guy they want to party with, now I'm the guy with an agenda, okay? A lot of times on the poll, once you've got the logical idea, once the plan is in place, the best thing you can do is be patient. Now, if you notice it really unraveling, like they start doing actions that are taking them away from the poll again, that's when you need to get in and fix it. But as long as they're proceeding towards the door, as long as they're finishing their drinks, talking amongst themselves, ready to go out the door, and things are progressing, getting in there and trying to rush it or getting nervous about it is massively, massively counterproductive, okay? As long as things are going your way, step back. There's this rule in medicine, the Hippocratic Oath. First, do no harm. When you're in a winning position, whether you're walking the girl out, they're talking about walking out, there's already that agreement, whatever, you're getting in a taxi, waiting for a taxi, any of those moments, first do no harm. You don't want to try anything ballsy. You don't want to try and escalate. You don't want to be try-hard in any way. You only want to really step in if things are getting messed up, okay? So don't lose from winning position by being try-hard.